what's up? Welcome back to the CEO Pulse podcast, where you get the real, the raw, and the mind of entrepreneurship. We are diving deep, neck deep on a very, very interesting topic, which is resilience, right? And to kind of go alongside with that, it's going to be the concept of self-belief and how the two interact. How can we have the awareness of such a thing as resilience to overcome failure and setbacks as we're going through the process of growth in the entrepreneurship space. So with that being said, I have the great pleasure to announce my great friend, Justin Thorstad, and co-host. Dude, I need to dial that in. I mean, I don't know. It's like sometimes I'm all over the place. Sometimes it's like really, really fine-tuned.
Well, I kind of like it.
Most times I don't care.
It's the spontaneity, the randomness of it all. Yeah. Otherwise it'd get boring.
Yeah. We got to do this with whiskey or something one time.
Okay, don't threaten me with a good time.
Yeah. But yeah, it's. I right before we hit record, I was kind of mentioning that it's been a topic that's popped up or bubbled up, with coaching students over the last several weeks, more than usual.
Okay.
So it's just interesting to catch. I mean, there's a lot of things that are changing in the landscape, right? I mean, there's you have revolutions kind of coming up in terms of technology like AI.
Yeah.
Like, how scary is that? Or how I mean, it's exciting, but you know what I mean? Like for example, it's definitely going to shift the way people do things, right?
Oh, for sure.
Now with change comes uneasiness, comes concern, comes a lot of doubt. And we need to have that that strong grip on our resilient self.
Yeah.
To overcome that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, to withstand the unrest, the unease, and be able to thrive in it instead of identifying with it all and allowing us to take ourselves down in the face of it.
Yeah. Let's start off by defining, right, what resilience is. It's very different than tenacity. It's very different than you're putting in the work and being committed to something. Because you can be fully committed to being an absolute success, right? But at the end of the day, it's if something happens, you got to have the ability to bounce back from it, right? Yeah. Which is right where that plays into.
Absolutely. Well, I think Tyson has a phrase like, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah.
Right? Every entrepreneur has an idea of what they want to accomplish. They got a vision of it and the rewards and the success that they're going to obtain or achieve. And then inevitably, something happens along the way that you didn't plan for, couldn't predict, some kind of X factor and knocks you down. And so it's, what do you do when you get knocked down? That makes all the difference in the world.
You get back in the ring with Tyson.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about failure a lot. And just to preface something, I believe failure is not even getting in the ring, or you get in the ring, you get punched in the face, and you quit.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It ain't over until I win.
Yeah.
So we're going to use failure loosely, in my opinion, based on my definitions, and that's totally fine so that people can relate.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, failure is really just kind of throwing in the towel. It's when you give up, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, one thing that happens, and you see this, it's a standard occurrence with every entrepreneur, right? We begin the work. We begin putting stuff together and working on plans and maybe putting a business model together and then launching, bootstrapping, and kind of, small beginnings, depending on where you're coming from, right? But you begin with a degree of action. And then what happens is that the thing that you start to create, right? Maybe it starts off as a kitten. This thing's going to turn into a lion at one point, and then it's a game of catching up, or keeping up with it, right? So when we talk about resilience, I think it's also important to make a point that it's not just about the bad stuff that happens. You need to have resilience and be resilient when things are going good and they're moving way too fast.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes that's it may sound like a best case scenario, but it's something that definitely can put you out of commission.
Just as much as the adversity.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's talk about setbacks. I mean, I guess begin with that, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, well, first of all, just so everyone watching, listening can use the same definition. I mean, resilience is really the ability to withstand or recover.
Right.
Right. So, with that being said, which came first, the chicken or the egg? You know what I mean? Like in business, if you get knocked down, you got to recover. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so just a simple strategy when it comes to, a setback is to realize that it's you. Like, it's you that got knocked down. And maybe it's because, again, an external factor blindsided you and you didn't plan or predict that that would happen. Cool. Okay. So are you going to get back up, or are you going to throw in the towel? And if you get back up, you got to pay attention and have the awareness of like that moment when you make that decision to get back up. You're building confidence. You're building self-esteem. You're building belief in self. And that's going to strengthen you to withstand next time adversity happens or the runaway train occurs. And so it's a learned and developed skill, in my opinion.
What do you think is and I'll share mine, but what do you think? I don't know. Give me a couple of triggers, right? That can have you holding on to that resilience and actually have that kick in. Sometimes, I mean, especially when things go south, right? We're feeling shitty. We don't, I mean, unmotivated, and it's hard, quote unquote, hard to feel like we want to get back, out there and then give it another shot. What can somebody do to change that and put it, turn it on a dime?
Yes, to reframe it, right? Well, first of all, when you notice you're in that lower state, right? Like I got beat up, I'm not going to be successful. It's like, notice that your mind starts thinking negative thoughts. Yeah. And if you identify with it as like somehow your mind is right and you're hearing truth, you start embodying that state, and it's a lower state. So that's your cue to notice that I feel less than how I usually feel. That's the cue. That's the trigger. And then for myself personally, and what I teach all of my agents and students is, when you get that cue, now what are you going to shift to, right? Because clearly the mind is running you, not you witnessing the mind. And to make that shift, like, you got to enroll yourself. And enrollment is the ability to get somebody to do what you want them to do for their reasons. So it's an opportunity to kind of reassess, wait, why did I even start this in the first place? What was the importance of it? Like, why do I want to do this? Let me remind myself. And that's why, having a vision and meditating, visualization is so supportive of that, is because you develop this like ability to withstand, so you don't have to recover when you're constantly reminding yourself. So having just the awareness that, I slipped back into a lower state, and let me remind myself of why I even want to do this in the first place. Because I think what a lot of people don't understand is that there's the law of duality, polarity, right? Yeah. So if you got success on one end, then its opposite is failure. And so they're just intertwined. They're both two sides of the same coin. Like, you're going to have setbacks. You're going to have adversity. Again, whether that's super success in a short amount of time that you didn't predict for, or setbacks. So it's just understanding that that's just part of the journey. And why is that a problem?
Good point, man. And one thing that works for me as I tend to put my hands in multiple different things, right? But I see it as a benefit to get distracted the right way. You know what I mean? And it's sometimes that helps me hold on to the overall, vision, right? I do have strategy sessions with myself. As a matter of fact, I just went through one this weekend. Over the last couple of months, multiple doors opened up, opportunities opened up, and I spread myself too thin. And through some clarity work, and I kind of got collected back together, right? And I went through a strategy session, and after last weekend, it's the path that I'm on makes a lot of sense. So, and it's 80% the same path that I've been working on for the last year or 2 years, right? But sometimes there's pivots, there's little switches that you have to kind of implement and roll out. That what you say no to becomes as important as the stuff that you say yes to.
100%.
Now the in terms of setbacks, it doesn't mean that I haven't had setbacks or stuff that just kind of gets in the way. But I think keeping my vision alive, the energy alive, the excitement alive of where the overall thing is going, helps me just kind of minimize the emotion behind the setbacks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's one thing that's always worked for me in terms of instead of only contemplating or only looking at, okay, what went wrong, what could I have done better. It's really shifting into building that thing that's gonna create the brighter light.
Yeah, yeah.
If that makes sense.
100%. I mean, I think for myself, one of
Yeah.
the really important things is before I say yes to a new startup, a venture, a project, an idea, I
Yeah.
really go back to, is this in line with my personal vision and mission?
Yeah.
And if the answer is yes, okay, then I already know that just the act of moving forward with it is going to be fulfilling, and that's the reward itself,
Yeah.
which is super important as a strategy because that knowingness, that understanding, like sets me up to not be attached to the end result.
Yeah.
Like and I know you can attest to this with a lot of your students and people you coach, is that a lot of people go to accomplish a thing because they think that they're going to get something when they hit it, like
Yeah.
that sense of self-worth and belief in self and confidence. And it's like, that all could be true. But if you're only going after that so that you can feel a certain emotion, like
Yeah.
you're doomed from the get-go. And you're going to sacrifice a lot of other areas of life in the pursuit of that one. Now you're lopsided, out of balance significantly, and not in a healthy way. Because there's just this unhealthy attachment to needing that end result versus just being in process, just being in motion with this plan, this strategy is the fulfillment of itself. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I'm reading a biography right now, Leonardo da Vinci's, and a couple of things that just kind of pop up the most is the curiosity factor, right? The guy was just innately curious about everything,
Yeah.
and then he had an almost unreasonable sense of observation. And there's multiple stories in his biography where that came in, from developing the art skills to imagination and everything else. But I think as I'm going through this, I'm thinking about my life, right? I'm thinking about where am I, and how does that apply to my world, and I feel like when we start to appreciate the bigger picture, when we start to really get enamored with the idea of making and believing the impact and the stuff that we always talk about often as entrepreneurs, right? The highlights just start to matter a lot more than the banana peels that we're going to encounter as we walk into it.
Oh yeah. And doesn't it make the when you actually do obtain or achieve something, and you had to go through hell to get it, like it makes the win that much more sweeter. I think. It's like, and if there wasn't any struggle in it, you wouldn't be building any character. Yeah. And if there's no struggle and no character, like what's the virtue of being successful?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a salt and pepper, man. It may not sound, it may sound counterproductive, but I think it really is, right? Like, we're human beings. We have to, feel. We have to, connect and really become part of whatever our environment is, and act in an active way, not just kind of, floating through it through life. And let me make a really quick point, going back to the reason I brought up curiosity and observation is because I think it's to me it's one of the things that helps me build resiliency, right? You get hit, you get punched in the face, I get punched in the face, and it happens quite often. It's a curiosity of what if. Like what happens if I get back in it? What happens if I just push, another 3 feet? And observation is, okay, where did I fuck up? All right, cool. That's something that I can come in and pivot. Does it make sense? Can I start, what are the people who are more successful than me doing? And that helps me build up that that tenacity needed, right? Or that resiliency required to really bounce back and get back in it. So it's we have to, especially when we're down, I think we have to open up our thinking.
100%. And I just want to kind of rewind the tape a little bit when it comes to like resilience. At least I subscribe to an understanding that we are called human beings for a reason.
Yeah.
Like we're this massive energy in a body. You have a body, you're not your body, right? And we're here to experience. And yet the vast majority of the collective population, they're looking at like, oh, I want to have that win, but I don't want to get punched in the face.
Yeah.
I want to have that win, but what if it gets too big and I'm successful? It's like, so you only want one half of the equation? That's weird to me.
Yeah.
And so when you can begin to understand that I'm here to have this experience and it's going to be ups and downs and peaks and valleys, like Yay, that's exciting because that's adventure.
Yeah.
And like it's the hero's journey. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek.
Yeah.
But so many people are afraid to deal with adversity, to be confronted with it. And it's like what you're really coming up against is not that thing. You're coming up against those uncomfortable emotions and self-imposed limitations, limiting beliefs.
It's you.
And you get to like have it hit you in the face so you can notice it, have the awareness of it and recognize it, and then reframe your relationship to it so you can let that shit go.
Yeah.
And if you don't give yourself that opportunity to be confronted with it, how do you grow? And if you're not growing, that means then how you think is the same thoughts you thought yesterday, right?
Same
90%
thing.
of them,
Yeah.
which lead to the same emotions, which lead to the same behavior. You're having the same experiences. And like nothing is new. You're just going through Groundhog's Day, reliving yesterday over and over and over again. So like that doesn't sound fun to me. I'd rather check out.
Isn't it crazy, man, how most go through life without having that sense of critical thinking and it's
100%.
spending time in just making some type of effort of creating new thoughts, creating
Definitely.
new connections, new possibilities within within our own self, within our brains.
Yeah. So, but
yeah.
one thing I really want to point out too is that if you notice, like we said, we were going to give you strategies, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, but what's the step by step? It's like the strategy is never the answer. It's the awareness of reality and what it is instead of what you think it is. Like people want tactical, pragmatic, step by step. Tell me what to do. And it's like, no, because I'm more concerned about what version of you, as far as consciousness awareness, is showing up to the strategy. Because there's infinite strategies. So a lot of people, I think, watch YouTube things and listen to podcasts to find the pragmatic. And it's like, I'm not saying that's not important, but first, before you take action, like all results are predictable based on the conversation you have with yourself before you take action. Like resilience and all these things, these are personality characteristics that are developed. And focus more on that and self-awareness than the actual, what do I go do?
I mean, I think you said it right. How are you showing, how do you show up to those moments where where resilience has to kick in, right? How are you showing up to adversity? How are you showing up to, to stress, to emotional, impact and stuff that just, sometimes surprises the fuck out of you.
Oh yeah. Man.
How are you showing up there, right? And yeah, we can create this checklist of, okay, the first thing is to have a vision. The next thing is to have clarity over that vision. Then, align your purpose with it and go through the checklist. I think at the end of that checklist, the thing that I'll include myself on this because I was pretty fixated on how things should kind of pan out, but I think there needs to be a last thing in there that says be willing to scrape it all off, and if it doesn't pan out, go back to the drawing board and ask yourself, how am I showing up? Right?
Yeah. Well, you know this based on your education and so forth, like the 4 stages of learning.
Yeah.
When we start off with something, we have an idea and we're like, oh, so excited about it, right?
Yeah.
However, we're unconscious of our incompetence. We don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
So then you set off on this journey, this adventure, right? And you're going to be confronted with what you didn't know. You're going to become conscious of your incompetence. Okay, great. Now I know that I didn't know. And so I got to what? Adjust, pivot, adapt. Yeah. And even now my new strategy, I have conscious competence. I know what to do, but I still have to think about it. It's not a habit yet. But if I keep at it and I implement it and I like that which you impress must be expressed, and I just keep going and don't quit, pretty soon it's going to be an unconscious competence. Like I don't have to think about it. I'm just successful at it because I installed a new belief, a new program, a new mode of operating. And so like that's a personality characteristic more so than a strategy, right? So I think all the successful people, Leonardo da Vinci, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, whoever you can say is quote unquote successful, like it's not their strategy so much as their personality showing up to the business.
Yeah, the relationship with the self, I think.
Yeah.
One thing to mention, it's worth mentioning, is it's that every situation is going to bring us back to that cycle. So if you've been an entrepreneur for, 50 years, you're still going to come to places where you're unconsciously incompetent.
Hopefully.
Right? For example, like the second step in that on those 4. And I think that's where we get hit. Like that's exactly where we get hit. And then we start second guessing ourselves and it just kind of, it can, the hole can get deeper and deeper from that point forward.
Absolutely. Well, if I may, what I love about what you just said is like, people that they start something new and they are insufficient, but they get to a level of success. And then they don't want to like leave that perch of success and they want to be the top dog or top woman or whatever. And they become complacent, casual. And that just brings on casualty. And so like, I feel like the people that I look up to, the people that I follow, man, they're willing to be a student.
Yeah.
So they get successful out of things like, okay, what's next? Celebrate the win and moving on. And let me go be low man on the totem pole and be a student and be a beginner again. Because that's stimulating. That enriches the mind and body. I'm learning things that are new and it's adventurous. Or just hit success and become complacent.
Yeah. I mean, I think the choice is clear, right? It's really, what do we choose to bring to the table when we get hit, right? I mean, that's resilience. It's bouncing back from, shitty things that happens, that happen to us on as we go through the process of it.
It's a choice.
It's a choice. Yeah. And, I mean, that plays right into self-sabotage. It plays right into self-awareness. We're gonna come back, and then that episode 2 of 2 is gonna be, I think it's gonna be, a lot. It's gonna be deep, man. It's gonna be. I think it's gonna be solid.
This is where I geek out.
Because self-sabotage is. I mean, it's a really big thing, right? I mean, that's what we're throwing in the towel. That's where the resiliency factor is kind of, is really challenged, and it's where we're not showing up the way that we should show up, that we know we should show up.
Yes.
Well, and it's still not happening.
See, so that self-sabotage and that self-awareness and that resilience, like if you didn't have those situations to become aware, man, and the awareness is, I'll just kind of give a prelude, like, are you the witness or are you the hostage in there? And without those situations, you don't have the opportunity to practice your resolve and your resilience to remind yourself, wait, I'm the witness. And so who's running the show right now with these thoughts and these emotions? Yeah. And that's going to determine the very next behavior that I take, which is quit or keep going.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, we can be the spectator, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Are you the spectator of your world or the conscious creator of it?
Yeah, exactly. I'd rather subscribe to that second one, man. By all means.
Yeah,
even with the bumps and bruises.
Oh yeah.
It's 1,000 times better than just, I don't know, just going through life and being a willow tree branch or something. I don't know.
Victim, yeah. The conditions, circumstances, environment are controlling you, or do you determine what they are?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, what's your take on resilience? I mean, give me an example of I mean, you really got hit. You got punched in the face. You bounced back. And what did you do? What did that look like?
Oh, man. To pick one.
Let me see. I have a list of 72 that happened last week.
Yeah, right. I got to be honest with you. Nothing really comes to mind that was like a defining moment, because every time something happened, I've thankfully feel blessed that I've been able to quickly reframe that into, how is this happening for me?
Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, that is part of the resilience process that you
I guess you're right. Yeah. So I haven't let anything really take me down.
What's the first thing that comes to mind? Something happens, you're walking, you're working the plan, and then shit breaks.
Well, I think the most impactful experience that I can remember was just as I launched, like Libertas Real Estate 5 years ago. My mind was saying all kinds of things to me, self-sabotage, right? To like, I was in a state of fear and like, fuck, what if I lose it all?
Yeah.
And we said it on this show, a different episode of like, I was talking with a buddy and he's like, so what if you do? I'm like, what do you mean, so what if I do? He's like, you lose it all. You file bankruptcy and you got no place to live and you got no money. I'm like, yeah, that would fucking suck. He's like, yeah, but you can sleep on my couch. And I bet within 90 days, we'll get you a bike, you know what I mean? Like, you'll figure it out, you'll bounce back and you'll do something new.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, that would suck. But wait a minute. Let me try that on for a minute. Let me like really feel into that. So I did, man. I did. Right then and there, I sat my ass down. I did a little meditation. It's like 5 minutes. Yeah. And I put myself like, everything I own is in a corner of his living room. I'm living on the couch and I got a bicycle. Can I handle that? Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Okay, now guess what? Like, all obstacles are now released and I'm moving forward. Because if I can handle the worst case scenario and be totally good with it, what am I afraid of?
Yeah.
And now I can fully move forward and release my perfect self-expression and go all in.
Wow, interesting. I like that, man. It really. I think when you go to extremes, and I actually have an example of that just happened this weekend. But it's easier to put everything else into context, right?
Yeah.
Like, shit, how much worse, right? Can it get unless I die or something? But it's putting things into context. I think a lot of times creates that level of clarity that's often needed.
Absolutely.
We were at a birthday party on Sunday, and then my little niece walks up, and then she asks, she's 10.
Okay.
10 years old, 9 years old. So she asked the question of how long are we gonna live? Like, when, I don't know if you went through this phase, but when I was little, I think it was right around, I don't know, between 8 and 10 years old, 11, where I was just terrified of death. Like, I thought that, my mom and everybody was gonna die around me, and I was gonna be just left alone. So I really had an issue with it.
Abandonment, huh?
Yeah. And my mom worked a lot, and single mom and everything. So I would spend, it's just how we rolled, right?
Yeah.
Like, I was 9, 10 years old. She would go to work, and then I would come back from school. The bus would be here, and I'd be by myself a few hours, and then she'd come back from work. And she did what she had to do, and but I don't know, it just like there was this thing, right, about death. And I remember going through that, and it would really like just sometimes keep me awake at night, right? And I was like, all right. And then my niece walks up, and she says, this is the death thing. She's also scared of death. And my son, he's 16, and he goes, I used to be very afraid of that too. But he just like out of the blue made the comment. I used to be like scared, like super scared of
Runs in the family.
Of like you dying or me dying, and it's just like a really, really bad fear that I used to have. And I mean, I just kind of, it caught me by surprise, right? I mean, I didn't want to make a big deal out of it because we were at a birthday party and whatnot. But he said this, and I kept thinking about it for the next, 10, 15 minutes. And then I turned around and asked him, like, so what happened? Like, how did you grow out of it? And he said, I accepted it.
Love it.
He just dropped it, man. He dropped the bomb. He goes, I accepted it. I realized that it's something that's going to happen, and it doesn't scare me anymore.
Yeah, that's
I was
beautiful.
like, oh.
Well, and
Dude, my skin right now,
Yeah.
it's like, he doesn't know.
Dude, that's profound.
He's probably going to listen to the podcast, and he's going to realize what it, but it's a really deep thought, right?
Yeah.
And it speaks right into that level of resiliency. I mean, you come in, you're talking about, putting things into perspective and accepting, okay, what if that thing was the worst that could happen?
Well, and here's what
I have somewhere to go with that, right?
Yeah, like your son maybe doesn't realize the full like impact and just how profound that statement is, because if you think about it, when we're thinking about what could go wrong during that self-sabotage phase, like,
Shout out to my kid. Love you, pa.
yeah, man, for sure. That becomes the object of our consciousness. We're focusing on it. And energy flows where attention goes. So if you're paying attention to what you don't want and you're feeling into that, don't worry, you're going to get more of it. And so the only way to drop that resistance is acceptance.
Yeah.
Like that's it. There's no other cure for resistance other than acceptance.
Yeah.
And so in your ability to accept the situation for what it is,
You're building
and
resilience.
Yeah, and see it for what it is instead of through a distorted, biased lens. Like, man, all resistance is dropped. Now all of my consciousness, all of my attention, I get to direct and place wherever I decide.
Yeah.
Like, without that, don't worry. Like, failure is inevitable.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to happen. It's part of growth.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean, the quitting part of failure, but mistakes are a different part. And I love making mistakes, man. I mean, in the moment, sometimes it burns, right?
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. However, I'm like, guess what? I was unconscious. I didn't know that. Now I do.
Now I do.
And I'm moving forward differently because of it. Thank you.
Yeah.
What a gift. You know what I mean? Like people pay a lot of money for an education, and that education is typically theory.
Yeah.
You've got actual experience now. Don't you feel more resourced? Don't you feel more confident?
Yeah.
Like,
and you already went through the emotional experience of it too. It's not just so this is I think this is where we get caught up. This is where we get caught up. We get caught up in the nuts and bolts and the pragmatics of how to do things, right? But you can't feel emotion in by reading something in the pragmatics of doing something in a book, right? But you're not getting emotion through an instruction manual.
So are you saying we only truly understand a thing when we experience it?
I think we truly adopt it and own it and like become familiar with it until we feel it, until we can learn context from experience, right?
But you're a philosopher.
Yeah, you're a philosopher. You're not a practitioner at that point. But when you go through it, it's just a different way of absorption. I mean, there is a big difference between the emotional, intelligence and the emotional side of us, and then the intellectual side.
100%.
It's
like whenever I'm doing any coaching.
You want to really own something, live it on both sides.
Yeah, well, you'd have to, right? Yeah. Like the analogy I use is like if I stand up in front of a bunch of ladies and I say, ladies, I've read every book there is on giving birth. Yeah. I've helped deliver babies. I understand what you go through. Yeah. Like they will attack me, right? Because it's like, how dare you? Yeah. You can't possibly understand. Why? Because you've never experienced it and the emotion behind it. Yeah. You'll never fully understand until you've experienced the thing completely. Yeah. Well, reading something versus putting it into action and having an experience of it, now you understand.
Now you bounce back from it. Mm-hmm. And you just acquired this brand new tool that's in your tool belt.
Yeah.
You have this brand new power that's in your tool belt. Like, shit, that happened, but okay, I did it once. I know I can do it again.
Absolutely.
Move on to the next bigger challenge. And that's a step up.
And now I'm even more excited to go on new adventures.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm excited about to talk about the self-sabotage part, because I think, that plays right into resilience and the abandonment the abandonment of resilience, right?
Yeah.
Come back next Monday. We're gonna be doing this. We're gonna talk about self-sabotage and self-awareness, how they play together, and it's gonna be episode 2 of 2. I'm excited about that one, man.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna go to town on it too.
Absolutely. So. Yeah. We're gonna dive.
There was like 70 things that I want to say right now on so I was like, no, I'm gonna leave that shit down. Awesome. Justin, where can somebody get hold of you?
Yeah, social media, Facebook, Instagram, my website, justinthorstad.com, or my cell, 602-348-8534.
Savage. All right. And I'm going to ask you for a favor. If you like the content that we're putting out there for you guys on a regular basis, make sure that you subscribe, you like, you share, throw a comment out there. It's a two-way conversation. If you can't comment right now on because you're on social or whatever situation, I don't know why you wouldn't be able to comment, but just drop it when you watch the video on YouTube, all right? And leave us a review. Have an opportunity, please do leave us a review. Those help a lot. They actually help us reach a lot more people and really spread the message of entrepreneurship, spread the message of mindset, spread the message of collaboration and just, making dope shit happen.
Absolutely.
So with that being said, we're going to catch you guys on the next one, and I'll see you next Monday. Stay focused. You got this. Let's go.